Please accept my Dandavat Pranams, accept my obeisances. We are glad to welcome you at our Gita Talks. And today, Mahayogi Prabhu will tell us about the fourth part of the Bhagavad Gita. Mahayogi Prabhu is a truth seeker, a spiritual seeker who has been on this path for more than 45 years. He lived in India. He communicated with great teachers as Sridhar Maharaj, Govinda Maharaj, and so now he is with us, and we are happy to listen to him. Dandavat.
Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dugdago Palanandana Parto Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahat Ekam Shastram Devakiputra Gitam Eko Devo Devakiputra Eva Eko Mantras Tasya Namani Vani Kama Pyekam Tasya Devasya Seva Omegana Tamaranda Sya Gyana Anjana Shalaka Chakshura Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatru Yascha Kripa Sindhyavicha Patitanam Valanabhyo Vaishnavayabhyo Namo Namaha Mukam Karti Vachalam Pungam Langayate Garim Kripa Tamahum Bande Pavananda Madhav. So I've been asked to speak on the Bhagavad Gita. We discussed 3 chapters of the Gita so far, and we're looking at the 4th chapter now. So the 4th chapter of the Gita is called Jnana Yoga. That's the normal chapter title that we hear so often. So the question becomes, what is Gyan? Now, the word Gyan, it's normally translated as knowledge. And for example, in Spanish, you have conocimiento, conoce. It's very close to the Greek gnosis. So how do we know what we know? How do you know that anything exists rather than nothing? That's the ontological question. But how do I know what I know? That's called epistemology. And so the 4th chapter of the Gita gives us a kind of transcendental epistemology. It explains how to know God, how to know the self, depending on how that's interpreted. We come from a Vaishnava school, which means we're followers of Vishnu or Krishna. So when we look at how to know God, really we're focused on how to know Krishna. Of course, this is not a problem for Arjuna because he knows Krishna personally. But how can you know God? How can I know God? And I think for the purpose of the talk, sometimes I'm just going to say God instead of Krishna. Now, I know this might irritate some people because many people have no problem with the idea that Krishna is some kind of a prophet or a wise thinker like Zarathustra. And the Bhagavad Gita and its teachings are something like the sayings of Zarathustra, something mystical and interesting. And you don't have to pay too much attention to the entire book. You can just listen to a phrase or two and it will tell you something interesting. But we're not taking that point of view. We're taking the point of view that Krishna is God himself, and he's revealing himself here in the Bhagavad Gita. So a lot of people don't like that. They'll take issue with that. Especially since normally it is believed that we're Hindus, and Hinduism is polytheistic and has thousands and thousands of gods on the one side. And on the other side, you have a Brahmic religion, which is monotheistic, but holds that only the God of the Bible is the God. So they don't like it when we say that Krishna is God. And we had a lot of problems with this back in the 1970s when Srila Prabhupada was preaching. He got a lot of opposition from Christians because the Christians don't mind converting other people to their religion, but they don't like it if Christians are converted. It's kind of an interesting question if you think about India. First, the Buddhists came and tried to convert the Vishnuites and the Shivites into Buddhism. And it worked for a while, but Buddhism left India, went to China. Then the Muslims came with the Mughals, and they did their best to destroy temples. It's said that Aurangzeb, the emperor during the time of Rupa Goswami, or a little bit after, dismantled the upper stories of the Madana Mohan temple of Rupa Goswami and demanded a pound of Brahmin threads every morning before he had breakfast. So the Muslims had a very powerful influence throughout India and did their best to diminish the followers of the Bhagavad Gita. And after the Muslims came the British Raj, and the British did their best with their missionaries to take apart the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and convince everyone to be Christians. And they did that for 200 years. Strange thing is that 250 years later, yoga is sweeping all over the world. And people love yoga. It's incredibly popular. There's an International Yoga Day where millions and millions of people participate. But the Christians, they don't like yoga. My friend Dandi Maharaj was trying to teach a few yoga classes in Moscow, I believe it was. And the secret police came to the hotel where he was giving his yoga class and told him to stop because this sort of thing is prohibited. So people don't really like it when we say that Krishna is God. But this is a class on the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad means Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. We're talking about Bhagavan Sri Krishna. And for all intents and purposes, there's no problem with substituting the word God for the word Krishna. So if there's some folks listening and don't understand that, I just gave my apology. In theistic literature, when one comes to defend a scripture, it's called an apologia in Latin, or an apology. So you may take this that personally I have faith in Krishna and I accept him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when I talk about the path to God, that's specifically what I'm talking about. But you will find that Krishna's teachings are universal. And so if you just put the word God instead of the word Krishna, a lot of this will make sense for you if you're struggling with your faith. One of the great theologians of the 20th century was Karl Barth. And he talked about revealed knowledge. And this is flying in the face of Kant and Nietzsche and other philosophers who have declared God dead and who say it's impossible to know God. But Barth liked a German philosopher named Rudolf Otto, who wrote extensively, influenced a lot of theologians in the 20th century. And if you look into Rudolf Otto, what you'll find is that he had been to India and he studied the teachings of Ramanujacharya, especially his Bhagavad Gita commentary. So it's ironic that many of the philosophical justifications given by Christian theologians, justifications that are taken quite seriously by Christian philosophers and theologians, many of these ideas come out of Karl Barth, who studied Rudolf Otto, who was a big follower of Ramanujacharya's ideas. Ramanujacharya offers a very powerful refutation of Shankaracharya, but we don't have time to get into all that right now. Let's take a look at the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So the fourth chapter is called Jnana Yoga, which means, loosely translated, the path of knowledge. We explained before, yoga really means path. What we all know and love as yoga with asanas, that's a particular path. But in the Bhagavad Gita, in the early chapters, first we see the path of karma, then we see the path of yoga or knowledge. And what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna is that in your struggle, it's important to link your work to sacrifice. But that sacrifice should be enlightened with knowledge. It's very difficult to come to unalloyed Ananya Bhakti without any knowledge. It's difficult to completely love someone without knowing something about them. Like there's this old song by, it's not Irving Berlin, George Gershwin, right? He says, the way you wear your hat, the way you sip your tea. And he discusses the person that he loves by remembering certain details. So when one becomes more deeply involved in Krishna consciousness, and, for example, decorates the deity every day, one can contemplate the lotus feet of the Lord, the garland that's being worn by the Lord, and other personal details. But some knowledge is necessary, at least at the beginning. We may say that the important thing is faith, and without faith, you cannot advance. But sometimes a bit of knowledge helps kickstart our faith, helps to ignite our faith. Sometimes no knowledge at all is necessary, but sometimes we like to think that a certain amount of argument and understanding might help us, especially for preachers, when we're trying to explain Krishna consciousness to someone else. It's helpful sometimes to know something. So here Krishna is describing the path of knowledge. So you can say that the fourth chapter is really about epistemology, or how we know what we know. Now, Western epistemology, what we normally consider to be gnosis or knowledge, aims at complete objectivity. And in the West, we think that if we can remove the subject, then we'll have a better grip on science, on how to understand and manipulate the things of this material world. So we do our best to eliminate all subjectivity. On the other hand, Vedic epistemology, as you'll see if you look at Rudolf Otto and Ramanujacharya, it notes that the Atma or the soul is self-evident. This is an axiomatic truth. And we begin with that. Western science tries to reduce Atma to mind, and then it wants to demonstrate that the mind is some kind of epiphenomenon of the brain. But this cannot be proven. It has not been proven. Consciousness remains what's called the hard problem. How do you create, what elements do you put into a box that you can stir around and create consciousness? This has not been solved. And that's interesting because if you think of artificial intelligence, meaning we have millions of computers connected in a network across the internet where millions of scientists can collaborate on discovering this. Even so, with all that brain power hitched together, they can't create a mosquito or an apple seed. You know, if you work in botany or biology, you can see I plant a seed and from the seed sprouts a little plant, and the plant later flowers and gives fruit. That won't happen if I plant a rock. Why? What's the difference between a seed and a rock? What is the living thing that animates the seed? The scientists don't know. They can analyze it and say, well, it has DNA. But I can put the seed into a frying pan and fry the seed until it's sterile. It won't sprout. It has the same exact DNA, but something is gone. So what is the living entity? How does it move? Of course, Krishna describes this in the second chapter. But in this chapter, he's moving more towards an understanding of the Supreme Soul or God. Ordinary science, however, denies the existence of God and yet proposes certain dogmas. The 10 dogmas of science have been analyzed by a biologist named Rupert Sheldrake. And he points out that scientists believe that nature is mechanical, it's unconscious, the laws of nature are fixed and cannot be changed, but nature has no purpose. All biological material has to do with DNA. Memory is kept in the brain and only in the brain. The mind is in the brain. Things like telepathy or spiritual consciousness are impossible. Only mechanical medicine works. And there's no such thing as time as you and I experience it. There's only clock time. So that's the Western point of view. The Vedic epistemology is different. According to what Krishna explains, we can see with the eye of the soul. And you can call this Atma vision or yoga vision, but here in the 4th chapter, it's called Gyan. And this sort of vision, how do we activate it then? How do we see? What is the core of our epistemology? Well, it's revealed knowledge. It means this knowledge comes from Krishna himself. And so he explains that in the beginning, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, and Manu to Ikshvaku. So he gives this idea of the parampara, evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo vidu, sakalineka makata yoga nashta parantapa. He says that this supreme science was received in this way through a disciplic succession of saintly kings. But from time to time, that succession is nashta, it's broken. And so Krishna reappears Sa evayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratana bhakto sime saka cheti rahasyam chetad uttamam. He says, I'm explaining this to you now because you're my friend and you can understand this. So Arjuna then says, but wait a minute. You instructed this to the sun god Vivasvan. How is that possible? Because you and I were only born in this century. How am I understanding that you instructed Vivasvan? And then the next line says, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. So God himself is saying, I have come and gone on this earth many times, but this is a mystery to you. You can't understand your past births. He says, Ajo pisan of Yayatma, Bhutanam Ishwaro pisan, Prakritim Svamadishtaya, Sambhavanyat Mamayaya. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I'm the Lord of all living things, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So here's God telling Krishna, God telling Arjuna, I come and go many times in different avatars. And then he explains why. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhutanam dharmasya taratmanam srijamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. So Krishna is explaining the reason for his avatar. When there is a decline in religion, then Krishna appears. So in the last chapter, we talked a lot about sacrifice and the sacrifice for the age of Kali, because you might ask, well, where's Krishna now? We're in a terrible situation. It's a very difficult age that we're going through. Well, Krishna appears as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the beginning of the 16th century with the holy name of Krishna as the sacrifice. So how do we understand God? How do you get the revelation of God within your own heart? Through the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Of course, that mantra needs to be activated by a bona fide spiritual master or guru. But here in the Gita, Krishna says, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma sangstapanataya shambhavani yuge, to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. So it's not our business to try to punish the miscreants or the non-believers. Krishna will do that himself, or he appears in the form of the holy name to deliver the pious. So it's not our business to make some kind of holy war like Arjuna did, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Chinadapi Sunechena Tarorapi Sahishnuna, be humble, be tolerant, chant the holy name. That's our business. Then Krishna makes a promise to Arjuna, and he says that if you actually understand about the avatars, if you actually understand the Leela, the divine pastimes of Krishna, then you'll be released from entanglement with the material energy and you won't be reborn. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vetis tatvataha taktvadekam punar janma. Taktvadekam means when you give up this body, punar janma, you won't be born again. You don't have to face that. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So that's why we have the Bhagavatam. I was talking to someone the other day. I think it was Tapanandini, and somebody asked her, "What is the Bible of your religion?" And I liked it very much. She did not say, "Oh, the Bhagavad Gita, that's the Bible of our religion." She said, "Well, the Srimad Bhagavatam, of course." Because Vyasadeva, after he finishes publishing the Bhagavad Gita, he's still not satisfied. He goes to Narada Muni and asks him, "Why am I not satisfied, oh Guru Dev?" And Narada Muni tells him, "Well, the Bhagavad Gita is very nice. It's very general, universal truth, but you did not explicitly describe the pastimes of Krishna or who he is really. He's the speaker of the Gita. So as such, the Gita it's Amrita, it's nectar, but you need to go deeper." And so Vyas goes and composes the Srimad Bhagavatam, every shloka of which is saturated with the pastimes and divine deeds of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. So he says, if you actually realize who my avatars are and what my divine deeds are, you will not be reborn. But we want more than that. Yeyata mam prapadyante tangstataiva bhajamyaham mama manuvartante manushya partha sarvashaha. And this is a very interesting verse. A lot of devotees like this because she says here, all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. That's really a very nice universal verse. Let me look at a different translation. Here's the translation in Srila Sridhar Maharaj's Gita. That's verse 11. He says here, however people surrender to me, I accordingly reward them. Being the ultimate goal of all paths, I am the objective to be attained by all. O Partha, all men follow my various paths. So Krishna says here, it doesn't matter what God you worship. In the end, you're worshiping me. I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why do we say that? Because the impersonal God is not a very developed conception. The idea of the creator, that's developed. It has a personal touch, but to create is to do something. It's kind of in the mode of passion, isn't it? To be creative. So the creator of this earth, he's working. Krishna himself has no work. If you look at all the different gods from Brahma, Shiva, Krishna doesn't do anything. So you have to ask, well, what kind of God is he if he doesn't do anything? He just enjoys. That's all he does. He's by himself. He's for himself. Everything is for his pleasure. He likes to dance. He has a flute that he plays. But work? Krishna doesn't do any work. Okay, later on in Dwarka, later on, Mathura, Dwarka, Kurukshetra, he tells Arjuna, look, I'm driving your chariot. I'm doing my karma. But the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is the Krishna that we see alongside of Radha in Radha Krishna or Hare Krishna in the mantra, he's not working. He's above that. So that makes him the supreme God. But if you recognize some higher power, some higher authority. That's good. You're on the path. We welcome you. Join us. We're not trying to say that if you don't worship Krishna, you're going to hell. We're saying, however you come to God, however you sacrifice yourself on the path towards God, that's a good thing. God will be happy with you. He'll reward you for that. And that's what Krishna says here. Prabhupada comments, everyone is searching for Krishna in the different aspects of his manifestations. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is partially realized in his impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence and as the all-pervading Supersoul dwelling within everything, including the atoms. But Krishna is fully realized only by his pure devotees. So if you're interested in complete and full realization, then follow the path of Krishna consciousness. And then Krishna says, men in this world desire success in karma. Kankshata karmanam siddhim yajanta ika devata kipram hi manushe loke siddhir bhavati karmaja. People want success in karma, and they want good birth and things like that. So they worship the gods. And that's all right. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with making partial steps toward complete surrender. He says, quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive work in this world. Chaturvarna maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagashaha tasya kartaram abhimam vidya kartaram avyayam. And to this end, the different divisions of human society are made. So if you're a carpenter, be a good carpenter. If you're a Shudra, be a good worker. There's different values for different sections of society mentioned in the Manu Samhita. The rules are not the same for everyone. The rules for the Brahmin is not the same as the rule for the Kshatriya. As William Blake, the poet, he said, the same rule for the lamb and the lion is tyranny. The lion can't follow the same rules that the lamb has. The lamb eats grass. The lion eats lambs. So they can't be expected to follow the same rules, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Shudras. But according to their particular station, according to how they're situated in the modes of nature, everyone should try to approach the Supreme. And then Krishna says, Tasya kartaram apimam, vidya kartaram avyayam. He says, I put the system forward. I'm trying to help everyone. So, as I said in the last talk, Sridhar Maharaj used to quote the story of the wise man and the miser, where the miser says, I want to make some advancement, but I can't. And the wise man says, well, give some charity. And the miser says, I don't know how to do that. So the sadhu tells him, practice your hand to giving ashes. Give something. Begin there. So from giving ashes to giving charity, to karma yoga, to jnana yoga, to jnana shunya bhakti, to ananya bhakti, you can see there's a gradation. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to start out at the beginning. You don't have to start out as a Buddhist who believes in nothing, and then a Shankarite who believes in oneness, and then gradually adapt some knowledge, and then get some faith. It doesn't have to be a process like that. Some people can begin on a higher level, but the different modes of nature and the different social classes are there. So then he says, no work affects me. Keep in mind, I'm God. I don't do work. I'm not the creator of the universe. I don't have to make things, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. So God is not interested in your money. He doesn't want your money. A lot of preachers will say, okay, God loves you and I'm his representative. So if you want more love from God, send some money to me. This is not what Krishna is about. He says, one who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive results of karma. And he says, evam gatva kritam karma purvar api mumukshubi kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvai purvataram kritam. All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding. So he's telling Arjuna, this is not something new. I didn't just invent this. Everybody in the old days, they all used to know this, but gradually the knowledge has been disappeared. He says, so follow your duty, do the karma that was assigned to you, do the dharma that was assigned to you, but do it with some knowledge. And then this question always comes up, well, what is karma? How do I know what's good and what's not good? Krishna says, kim karma, kim, it means what? Like, in Russian, there's a lot of question words with ka, kagda, kto, kim. So she's what? Kim karma, kim akarma. What's karma? What's akarma? Kavayopi atra mohita. The kavis, they can't figure it out. They're mohita, they're bewildered by that. Tate karma pravakshami yaj gatva moksha se shubat. He said, what's karma? What's not karma? It's very difficult to understand. What's inaction? Can you be inactive? If I sit and meditate for 50 years so that in India, you'll see people like this. They have their fingernails are like that and their beard is out there and they're skinny. Is that appropriate? Can you really do that? Is that inaction? No, it isn't, because even by breathing, you're killing living beings, right? That's karmic. So Krishna says, I'll explain to you what action is. And if you understand this, you can be liberated from all misfortune. He says, the intricacies of action are hard to understand. So try to understand properly. What is karma? What is vikarma? What is akarma? And it's interesting that Krishna is not laying down the laws of Manu. In the laws of Manu, you'll see this kind of division. It will explain what is right karma, what is right action, what is not. But Krishna says very subtly here, he says, one who sees inaction in karma, and karma in inaction is intelligent. And he's in the transcendental position, although engaged in all kinds of activities. So this brings up the idea of what Srila Prabhupada used to call yukta vairagya, which means renounce the fruits of your work, renounce the profit, but do what you're given to do. If you're a brilliant artist, you can try being a cook in the kitchen, but maybe you're not good at that. If some people have a special gift for gardening and growing plants, but we may tell them, okay, go out and sell books, but they don't know how to talk to people, so they can't do that. Don't copy somebody else's karma. Do what's given to you, but do it in knowledge, do it in dedication. That's what he's telling Krishna here. And you'll achieve the transcendental position. Your karma will be burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. And by giving up the fruits, tyakta karma phala sangam. Phala, it means fruit. It's interesting, in Spanish, the word for enjoyment is disfrutar, which is interesting for me because it means you take the fruit. Disfrutar means there's the fruit on the tree, you take that fruit and you enjoy it. And people are always telling me, Mahayogi, enjoy your life. Because I'm too intellectual, I'm always thinking about things, asking questions. Enjoy your life. Disfrute. And I hear that, and I hear Krishna telling Arjuna, no fruit for you, karma phalam, what tyaktva karma, phala sangam, give up the fruit. The fruit's not for you. Grow the tree. It's a beautiful thing to grow a tree. In Mexico, it's very hard to find the classic yellow lemon that we have in the United States. It's a sweeter fruit. What we have down here is a little green lime, and they call that the limon. But my wife went to the market because she knows I like lemons, and she bought a lemon, cut it open, dried the seeds for 2 weeks, planted the seeds, and now there's a tree growing. And just to see that tree growing gives me warmth in my heart, because I can see this, there's my wife's love for me. She dedicated herself to putting a seed in the ground, and the seed is sprouting and it's turning into a tree. I don't care about the fruits. So to get to the point where you can do your work and do it excellently and not worry about the fruits, this is a high realization. The other day, Gandhi Maharaj was saying, well, people say people in India are fatalistic because well, I'm going to have a next life. I'm going to be a carpenter again in my next life. Why should I make a good guitar? Why should I make a nice sitar? I'll just throw something together and sell it. And I don't care. Who cares about the karma? But Krishna is saying, do your work with excellence, do it well, and dedicate it to me. Try to develop some spiritual understanding about who you are, what it means to wake up in the morning every day and see the sun, and dedicate yourself to me. This way, he says, abandoning all attachment to the results of activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruit of action. So if you can get to that point where everything that you do, every word that you speak, every thought that you have, every action, every move that you make is dedicated to Krishna, then you're not making any more karma. Karma is when you want it to come back. And he says, such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Wow, that's really difficult. Try that. See how far you get. It's not easy. I know people who have tried to live off the grid, on a farm, eating potatoes, acting only for the bare necessities of life. It's a very, very difficult path. Also, what's bare necessity for you is not enough for me. We're not all the same. So I remember when I was in Moscow with, I think it was Pritu, and I have a big coat. We're walking out into the snow, and I turned and I asked Pritu, I said, is it cold outside? It's nothing, Maharaj, nothing, 0 degrees, 0, nothing. And I thought, 0 degrees, that's freezing. So 0 degrees for Pritu, it's nothing for him, but it's freezing for me. The bare necessities for a king are different from the bare necessities for Chanaka Pandit. But if you can get to this place where you give up your sense of proprietorship, your machismo, your egoismo, your me, by dedicating yourself to Krishna, then you become free from sinful reactions. Very difficult thing to do. That's why people like to do anything else but surrender. He says, he continues like this. he who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord. So it's a great chapter in the Bhagavatam about the Python man. And there's this man, I think he's found, I think it's about Bharat Maharaj, but I can't remember. But he comes across this man in the road who's fat and naked. And he says, oh man, why are you fat? Why are you naked? And the man says, well, this is my lifestyle. I lie here in the road and accept whatever comes to me. But why are you fat? Because lots of people pass me by and they say, oh, you poor man, let me feed you. So I'm fat. And it's recommended to follow the logic of the Python man. And of course, we can't do that. You would starve to death now. But the idea that try to accept what comes to you. Sometimes what comes to you is very terrible. It's not good at all. It doesn't make you happy. But Krishna tells Arjuna, be equal in happiness and distress, joy and sorrow, winter and summer. Because after all, this is just your human body. That's not going to go anywhere. So he says, who is satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy. Duality is, like I was saying, hot and cold, anger and happiness. Those are dualities. It's an interesting science experiment you can perform. If you get a bucket of very hot water and a bucket of ice water, and you put your hand in the ice water for 10 seconds, then put it in the hot water for 10 seconds, then put it back into the cold water for 10 seconds. After you do that a couple of times, your nervous system can't tell you, is this hot or is this cold? So that's duality, right? Oh, I'm so happy. Everything is so beautiful. Oh, I'm so sad. There's too much drama. It's really the same thing. Happiness and sadness are actually extreme stimulation of the nervous system, like hot and cold. But the soul is above that when he's absorbed in Krishna, who is steady both in success and failure. If you look at the big successful people in life, they'll tell you, I had a lot of failure before I got to this position. I had to suffer a lot, but I just kept going. Now I'm successful and the success is okay. But what I care about is my art, my music, my poetry, my literature, my work, my karma and my dharma. That's a low form of sacrifice, what Krishna's talking about. Of course, as the Gita progresses, you'll see more development in his discussion of bhakti, which will come in a later episode of our talk when Madhusudana Maharaj begins to speak. So Krishna says, Gata Sangasya Muktasya Jnanavastita Chetasa Jagya Charata Karma Samagram Pravaliyate. So when he says the work of a man, it's an awkward translation because it's not exactly work, it's karma, which is action and reaction. And it doesn't have to be a man, it could be a woman as well. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence. Also, we don't like this word merge so much. Let's see what Sridhar Maharaj says, or his translation anyway. 423. Yeah, there's a commentary here. And Sridhar Maharaj doesn't comment too much on the Bhagavad Gita, but now and then he does. He says, the statement samagram pravaliyate should not be misinterpreted to mean that the actions of liberated souls cause remote worldly consequence, but the actions offered to Krishna through karma yoga cause no subsequent reaction. That's what he has here. For those who are detached, enlightened, and liberated, all their actions performed in the spirit of sacrifice are perfectly dissipated. But basically, he's continuing the same theme. In other words, if with some divine knowledge and inspiration, you can sacrifice yourself and your work to Krishna, then that work becomes free from karma. This is the basic idea. I see Pranashish has joined us. Haribol. Thank you for joining us. Trying to get through the fourth chapter here. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there because this kind of goes on in the same way. I thought I would get to the Tadvidi Pranipatena verse about the guru, but that's kind of a lengthy discussion. So what you can see here is Krishna's really continuing the theme that he began in the third chapter, where he's telling you sacrifice is the important thing. And he's beginning to approach the idea of knowledge, divine knowledge, revealed knowledge about God as an important component of sacrifice. So I think this chapter is so filled with deep understanding that I can't just go through 42 verses in an hour. It gives me about a minute and a half for each verse, and I'm overloaded. So let's have some questions.
Yes, Mahayogi Prabhu, I have a question. I have a question about famous verse you were speaking today about it. I mean, 4.11, which is, howsoever people surrender to me, I accordingly reward them. Being ultimate goal of all paths, I am the objective to be attained by all. O Partha, all men follow my various paths. And so my question is, it is an actual question for me because I'm living in Israel, yes?
You're living where?
In Israel.
Of course, yes.
And I'm trying to understand what happens in terrorists' heads. Terrorists are also going to the Lord, and so they also will be rewarded. They sacrificed their lives on their way to God, believing that they are fulfilling His instructions. But what would be the attitude of the Lord to these terrorists and sacrifice?
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
People.
I'm sorry. Can you please
hear
repeat?
Me?
You're breaking up.
Yeah. Yes. I said that terrorists are also going to the Lord, and they will be rewarded because they sacrifice their lives on their way to God, believing that they are fulfilling His. Is it so or not? Or I don't know.
Well, your question is about the 11th verse or the 12th verse, where Krishna says, I reward everybody accordingly, right? As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Well, it's an interesting verse, isn't it? You know, ye yata mam prapadyante, tangs tataiva bhajamyaham, bhaja. Bhaja means worship, aham, you know, ye yata mam prapadyante, according to how they worship me and surrender to me. Mama vartmanu vartante, they're all following my path, right? But that's a double-edged sword. There's different ways to look at that, right? For example, if I'm the king and I say, according to how you follow my law, I will reward or punish you. That doesn't necessarily mean that whatever I'm doing is lawful. It may be there's a bit of an ironic sense there. If I say, according to how you worship me, you will be rewarded. So you're killing cows, you're stealing, you're doing sinful activities. All right, that's how you worship me? Okay, I'm going to reward you accordingly. Maybe there's a bit of an ironic sense there, It doesn't mean that all religions are good. There are people who worship the devil. They're Satan worshipers. They, sacrifice children. That's not really what Krishna is talking about here. Remember, again, you have to look at a scripture in context. So what's the context of the Bhagavad Gita? He's talking to a Vedic prince, Arjuna, in the struggle for a Vedic kingdom in a Vedic world where people follow the Manu Samhita. So, according to how people do their sacrifice, he's thinking, well, maybe they're sacrificing to Shiva, maybe they're sacrificing to Brahma or some other demigod. Given the context of the Gita, you could say, well, okay, it's a universal text. So here's God speaking in general, and he means all religions. Well, that's a different point of view. I wonder what Bhaktivinoda Thakur would say. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, there's no need for sectarianism. In the end, we're all worshiping the same God. But you can also detect in the writings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur a certain gradation or development, where in his early writing career, he's writing more for what was called the Bhadra Lok, or the people in Bengal who were the gentlemanly society, who, like Rajram Mohan Roy, they liked the idea of the English being civilized. And he's kind of trying to tell them, come back to your own culture, come back to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, come back to the Bhagavatam. And he's being as general and as generous as he possibly can be. On the other hand, you've got Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who's very strict about a lot of things. So would Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur sanction Christianity and Islam and Judaism? Then again, I was with Sridhar Maharaj in Navadvip when he was talking about Vaikuntha Vritti, and he said that at one point, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, perhaps we must establish a hotel not far from the Mat, where the Westerners, they can eat that thing that they like to eat. They can have their food, but they can come and listen to the divine message of the Bhagavat here at the Mat. So I saw on the internet and Facebook an interesting thing spoken by an indigenous person from the Americas, an Indio, if you will. And he said, there's some people who love the idea of tolerance until they get into power. And then, because you tolerated them, and then they do what they want. They become tyrants. Just as in India, Muhammad Ali Jinn and the Muslim League, they said, oh, well, you need to tolerate us. You know, we're an important minority, we're the Muslims, until the point where Great Britain divided India with a partition and created Pakistan and Bangladesh, or East Bengal, East Pakistan at the time, right? But you look at Pakistan today, they're not very tolerant of the Hare Krishnas. You know, the very powerful Muslim countries like Iran, they don't like minority religions. They don't like the Hindus there. They don't tolerate, they don't tolerate Harinam. A friend of mine, Atreya Rishi, was the GBC for Iran in the 1970s. And they made him leave the country. But they were doing Harinam in Tehran and chanting Hare Krishna. And he was taken, they were arrested and taken before a magistrate. And they had to determine, is this a religious ceremony or is it music? And they asked the common people who observed the Harinam, did you feel anything? And they said, yeah, we felt something. Okay, it was music. You're prohibited. And in the event, he was banned from the country. I had another friend in Iran who was Baha'i. And the Baha'i, they're just nicest people you might want to meet. Very friendly. But he was driven out of Iran because of his religious belief. He was persecuted. So everybody likes religious toleration up until the point where they get the government, and then they want to impose their religious views on everyone else. So I like to think personally, you know, having looked at that, I like to think that God is a merciful God. One of the reasons why I became a devotee was because I didn't like the Old Testament God. The Old Testament finishes with the words, lest I smite the earth with a curse. Like, who is this guy? How dare you, you know? Really? That's what it's all about? Lest I smite the earth with a curse. I kind of liked Jesus. I liked the Sermon on the Mount. I still do. But many of the followers of Jesus have a very hell-hot, sin-black view of the world, that either you're with us or you're against us. And if you're against us, you're going to hell. And I've experienced a lot of Christians in my devotee career where I would be trying to distribute the Bhagavad Gita in the airport. And I would stop somebody and say, excuse me, sir, I don't have time. Of course not. Time has you. Think about it. Now, Krishna says here in the Bhagavad Gita, Kalosmi Bharatharshava, I am time. Do you have time to think about your immortal soul? I don't know. I would say things. And then the Christians would come up behind me and make the sign of the cross and tell me I was the devil and I was Satan. And that never appealed to me. So I don't like religious intolerance. I remember when I was in Russia, they were beginning to persecute the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I have some devotee friends and they said, yeah, who cares? You know, we don't care if they persecute the Jehovah's Witnesses, the testigos, Jehovah, who are they? But I said, look, they're the tip of the spear. Once they persecute the Jehovah's Witnesses, after that, then they go after the evangelical Christians. And when they're doing that, they go after the Hare Krishna devotees. And you're next. So, you know, try to promote religious tolerance. It's good for us. We're a very, very, very tiny minority religion. So religious tolerance is a good idea for us. So if Krishna says here, as they surrender to me, I reward them accordingly, maybe that means, yeah, you know, everybody's on the path. Let's take a broad view and say everybody's on the path. I don't know, but the person who asked the question has left our meeting. What do you say about Dandi Maharaj? What do you say about that? What's your point of view? Right? Krishna says, as they surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. Does this mean that, other religions are equally as valid? Krishna's recognizing them too. How do you look at that? He's translating. Oh, okay. He's doing like a simultaneous. He can't do a simultaneous translation and take a question because then he has to translate himself. See, that's why reason cannot uncover the soul, because while you're reasoning out what the soul is about, you have to use the soul's using the mind to do that. Tapanandini. Tapanandini has a question. You have to turn on your microphone. I don't know if, who's moderating? Somebody who's moderating the meeting has to turn on the microphone. Can I do that? Nope. Okay.
Okay,
Well,
I'm here. I'm here. Well, more than a question, it's a commentary about this,
okay.
the matter we are talking about. You are talking about. Well, I was once I was asked about in the battlefield, where how can you know if both sides are have religion, and it is a religion fight? Which side is God? Because they offer to God, and the other side also offer to God. That also happened in the Kurukshetra war. They were all Krishna devotees fighting there. Some were having an unfair position, and the others were in the right position of recovering what was for them, the kingdom. So one thing that I can understand of this is that Krishna didn't take part of the battle. Krishna didn't take any sides of the battle. Even he took the humble position of being the driver of the chariot of Arjuna, because he wanted to be with Arjuna in that thing, but he was not going to fight. So what I understand from this is that Krishna doesn't take position for who is good and who is bad. What he is not interested in the success of the material wars of relations at this day. I think that to take the position as how you say this, ejecutante del karma. ¿Cómo se diría eso, Mahayogi? Ejecutante del karma, alguien que ejecuta el karma. It is a wrong position, but because Krishna has no partners in this matter. The karma is there to be punished of the people who deserve it, and to give reward for those who deserve it too. So that's the law, the karma law. And what Krishna is, what is the position of human being in this world? It is to find out our path to the self-realization of our soul. That's the only thing that is our only duty.
Okay, that sounds good, right? The Kurukshetra war it's going to happen. It's a karmic event. It's predetermined to some extent, okay? Krishna precipitates this. He wants to rid the world of materialistic kings because Bhumi and the planet Earth in the form of a cow has gone to Vishnu, and he's asked him, please remove all these terrible forces from the earth. But as a personal matter, Krishna's not taking personal sides in the discussion between Bhima and Duryodhana, for example. He does help Bhima. He helps Arjuna. So in that sense, yeah, he is taking sides, but he's not getting involved personally as a personal matter. He's just seeing to it that the end comes out the way he wants, but he's not personally angry with Duryodhana. He's not personally angry with Bhishma. It's just, that's the karmic situation. That's how it's going to play out. But getting back to the idea that all people are on a path to God. So Krishna accepts that. That's what he's telling Arjuna here. Insofar as religious tolerance goes, anyone who's trying to dedicate themselves or sacrifice themselves, if God is a merciful God, and we believe he is, then he's trying to accept and honor that sacrifice, as primitive as it may be. And that's what he's telling Arjuna here. Vrajasundari, you left our meeting. You asked the question.
I had problems with internet connection.
Are you still here?
Sorry. Attack.
No, it's just we're trying to answer your question. So I'm curious to know, does that help you? That's a nice verse.
So that helped me.
Yeah.
It is very, very, very deep and interesting verse. And when I was reading the Bhagavad Gita first time, the verse touched me very, very, very much. That moment.
Yeah, so.
Sorry, simply I had with online connection, internet connection.
It's okay. Happens all the time. But so, you can look at that verse differently. He says, as you treat me, I treat you. Well, so that means if you treat him bad, that won't be good for you. Or is he saying, peace be upon you, as you, whatever you do, it's okay. I welcome that. So, but I didn't understand the part about living in a Jewish country. What was the dilemma there?
Simply, there are lots of terrorists here.
Terrorists?
Terrorists. Okay. People who are killing other people, thinking that this will lead them to heaven, to the Lord. I mean, from Palestine.
The Palestinian and the Israeli.
Right. Well, then I would say this, Brajasundari. This is something that is often used by atheists or people who are covered atheists to argue against any kind of theism. They say that, well, religion is the root of all the problems in the world. And if you people just didn't believe in these silly mythological ideas, there would be more peace in the world. You believe in one invisible man. I believe in a different invisible man. And we're going to fight over that. We're going to fight because your invisible man is white and my invisible man is blue, and you worship an invisible woman. This is ridiculous. But this is sort of a very old and used atheist argument. Theism is not as important in the world today as it was 500 years ago. And these wars that we see, they're not about religion, they're about money, they're about land. Just the other day, Tapanandini, you would know about this, here in Mexico, a court decided to change a line. And they put the line, instead of putting the line over here, they said, no, you know what, we're going to put it over here. So part of one state in Mexico, which was the state of Oaxaca, is now located in Chiapas. And part of Chiapas is now located in Oaxaca, right, Chapanandini? Okay, so what does it mean? It means all your life you worship the Oaxaca flag, you have the Oaxaca culture, you wear the Oaxaca clothes, and tomorrow, what? You wake up and you're in Chiapas. Why? Because somebody put a line down there. So Israel and Palestine exist the way they do because someone put down a line in 1949 or 47 or whenever they decided to create Israel. And the people who were living nomadically and wandering about in Palestine suddenly discovered, oh my God, I'm in a different country now. So these sort of national interests are about money. They're about making a profit. They're about land. Who owns the land? Now, I used to own land in Chiapas, but now it's in Oaxaca. Let's go to war about that. And usually we can discover other things. We can find out that the people in Oaxaca worship, La Santa Muerte, and the people in Chiapas worship La Divina Muerte. And so, okay, let's fight. Because according to Noam Chomsky and notable intellectuals, the real wars, it's about money. And if I can make you believe that you belong to the Green Party and someone else belongs to the Red Party, then I can divide you along that sort of a line. But it's not really about being Jewish or being Islamic. Extreme Islamic, behavior is something that's come about in the last 50 years or so. And people who were not really religiously Jewish, they were more culturally Jewish, lived in Israel very peacefully for a long time. But now these divisions are being promoted by important powers that we have no control over. I don't believe that religion is the root of evil. I believe if Krishna is saying here, and he might be, let's say that Krishna is saying, whatever your religion is, you're ultimately worshiping me. So this is a beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita that promotes peace, harmony, and can't we all live together and chant Hare Krishna and be happy, And that's the way I'd like to see it. I don't think Krishna is saying here, well, if you don't surrender to me, I'm not going to reward you. I think because Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan, Iti Shabdyate, there's these different realizations of reality. Reality as this undifferentiated divinity of consciousness. Reality as the supersoul, the Paramatma within us all, or the personal God. So I think if you look at the history of India and what Hinduism is, Hinduism is sort of a catch-all idea for Indian culture. It's very tolerant. It's so tolerant that it tolerated the Muslims for 500 years and it tolerated the English for 250 years, and it's still there. So there are people who may believe that the Bhagavad Gita promotes intolerance, but my conclusion is that it promotes a very tolerant, universal view. Okay, does that help you? I'm trying.
Yes, thank you. We have one more question from Lilavati Devidasi, she is also from Israel. Just a second, I will read it. So, She's writing, my obeisances to all the devotees and Mahayogi Prabhu. It is not always easy to do your dharma. Even Arjuna had difficulty with this. How can we understand what is our karma and what is not? Because because we will have difficulties anyway. I think that she means you understand, yes.
Yeah, you will have difficulty anyways. It doesn't matter what you do. So if you decide that I'm a carpenter, that's who I am, that's what I do, you'll still bang your thumb with a hammer, right? It doesn't mean that you escape the material situation. It's still difficult. You understand more about what your karma and what your dharma is as you move through life. And it may change a little bit from one station to the next. You may believe that your karma is to race motorcycles when you're 15 years old. But when you're 25, you may decide, actually, I'm a mechanic. That's what I do. I fix motorcycles. So your karma and your dharma, it's difficult to determine, but you determine that with the help of a teacher. And it may be your father, it may be your mother, who are your first teachers, maybe a teacher in school. If you're very fortunate to connect with a divine teacher, a spiritual master, then that will help you much more. The next part of our talk will be about guru. I wanted to try to do that today, but it's the 34th verse in the chapter. So we'll get to that in our next talk, and we'll talk about the guru and his position. But for example, in my own life, I'm an intellectual. It's who I am. It's what I do. I read books, I study, I think, I write poetry, I write fiction, I write commentaries on the scriptures, I write plays, I play music. That's who I am. It's what I do. I can't change that. When I first came to the Hare Krishna movement, the devotees asked me, what can you do? And I told them, and they said, well, we need someone to collect money. Go out and collect money. And I said, I don't know how to do that. I'm no good at collecting money. They said, well, that's what we need. So they gave me a bucket. Here's a bucket with some candy in it. I said, what do I do with this? Go with him. And so they dropped me off on a street corner. And I said, what do I do now? I said, walk up to people and you say, there he is. How you doing today? Listen, we're helping them out. It's a benefit. We're helping them. We're helping the people. I say, that? Really? Yeah. And then you take your hand like this and tap on the bottom of the bucket so it makes a sound. And you say, give a donation. I can't possibly do that. You're crazy. Nobody will believe me. It's too bad. Do it. And if they give you more than $1, you give them a Back to Godhead magazine. Okay. So that's what I did for 6 months. And after 6 months, they said, you're good at that. Now go to the airport and give people books. I give them a book? No, you put the book in their hand and then you tell them to give $10. Really? They're going to do that? Yeah, you can do it. So what I discovered after about 4 years of doing that was that I learned how to talk to people. That's what the devotees taught me. Now I can sit here in front of a microphone and talk. I learned how to do that. But I went to Sridhar Maharaj and, he said, you can maybe publish my ideas in a book. If you can print a book, that would be good. Bhakti Sudhir Goswami is doing that. Try to help him. And I did that. And that's when I really found myself. Now I know who I am. I'm a teacher. That's what I do. I love teaching. I'm not very good. Some people are very good at being the center of attention. And they're like Elvis Presley. Or John Lennon. Everybody's just, wow. They listen to everything. I'm not like that. I have to prepare my talk and think about who am I talking to, and then try to teach a few points. But I know how to do that. That's my karma and that's my dharma. But it took me, 30 or 40 years to discover. So if the person asking the question is young, then I would say, try different things and try to see what you're good at. And you'll find out what your karma is and what your dharma is. Other people will tell you, oh, you did that. That's really good. Keep doing it. And you'll understand, okay, I can do this. I don't know. Does that help you at all? I hope so. Because you think, okay, I want to be an artist. And so you draw and you paint and you practice it, but you can't sell your work. That doesn't mean that you're not an artist. It just means that right now your particular thing is not commercial, right? But it may be that that's who you are and that's what you do, right? Or you're, I don't know, a speaker. But you hate people and you don't want to stand up and talk in front of people. And you're like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do this. But if you practice, suddenly you realize, okay, this is who I am. I'm good at it. So finding your dharma and your karma is very useful to try some different teachers and see how do you work with those teachers. And the teacher can tell you, okay, I'm going to teach you mechanics. And, you lose your finger. And the teacher will say, what? You did what? You're not a mechanic. Do something else. And this is that's your path of self-discovery. It's not something that I can tell you. But anyways, I'm here because Satyasundari asked me. And then Dandi Maharaj said, you're doing a good job, do more. And Tapanandini said, we like it. And Pranashish said, hey man, keep talking. So I'm trying to serve this little group. And if you like what you see, come back next week and we'll talk about, there's Harimati, I forgot her. She's brilliant, she's a great translator. I met her in Ukraine. There's more people on here, but because I'm talking, I can't see it. There's Parneshwari, Elena Bitolina, and the Radha Madhava Das, and Lvov, I think it is, Tungarasi, and Suvashini is there. Hare Krishna Suvashini, very sincere teacher of the Bhagavad Gita herself. So I hope I haven't said anything wrong. Victoria Shevchenko, I think that's a Ukrainian name. There was a famous Shevchenko poet. So I hope I have not offended anybody. Please forgive me if I have. I'm trying to give a reading of Bhagavad Gita for all of you. And I love you very much. And thank you for joining us. If you like the program and what we're talking about, share it with your friends and try to support Satya Sundari and her goal to make the Bhagavad Gita an important thing to think about.
Thank you, Mahayogi Prabhu. Thank you, Lord. Please accept our obeisances. See you next week. So, Dandavats,
Right.
Hare Krishna.
Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai, Jai Mahayogi Prabhu, Jai, Hare Krishna.